Cool. And we are on.
So, shall we start? We shall. So, hello everybody. So, thanks for being here. So, I will be your host today. So, I'll be helping in the chat if you ever have question or comment. So, I'll be gathering them and help Helgi manage the webinar for today. So today I am proud to present you my friend Helgi, that is the part of the core group at the intersection group. And today he will be presenting us his webinar, Assumption is the Mother of All F-Ups. So Helgi, thanks for giving us your time and have a nice webinar, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you. Awesome. Great. Thank you all for coming up. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to throw them into the comments. And San Sebastian, we will either take them up as we go or we will take them up in the end. I'm gonna. If you've listened, if you attended the webinar, my last webinar about a month ago, or if you looked at the recording of it, it will be a little bit of repetition, but don't worry, it's not the same thing. It will be I will be diverging at the end of it, digging deeper into how we can deal with our assumptions. First, I just want to mention the conference, the Intersection 25 conference that we have in Brussels in September. Tickets are live, so if you wanna join us there, it would be great to see you guys. But otherwise, so change. I just wanted to look a little bit about change, with the fact that we've been living with change for a long time now. One of the most common or most cited quotes about change is about 2,500 years old, meaning that even 2,500 years ago, Heraclitus and his philosopher mates were contemplating change and how it affects society, and their result is basically that change is the only constant that we deal with, that everything else changes, and that means that we are constantly working with change, not only now, it's been going on for basically ever, as long as there's been people. But the funny thing is that even if we have been working with change, actively working with and contemplating change for so long, we're still pretty bad at it. And it seems like we more often fail than not. So it's not often that we actually succeed. And what I mean about succeed is not about just completely failing. It's more of it's where we're either delivering late, over budget, or under delivering on the promise that we made in the beginning, or simply not delivering at all. And when we're talking about up to 70 or 80 or 90% of projects are failing, that is something that we need to really look into. What can we do more about it? How can we address that? So of course, like everybody else, I was a little bit curious about, okay, why are we failing at change? And like everybody does right now, is I asked ChatGPT. And I asked ChatGPT how many unique reasons it can give for why change and transformation initiatives fail. And it basically told me, well, I can give you about 600 unique reasons for why change and transformation initiative fails without any repetitions. So unique reasons, 600. That's quite a lot. So maybe that is a certain reason for why we change. It's really difficult to actually keep track of 600 reasons for why for failing, that making sure that we succeed in all of those reasons and addressing them. So for me, I started to read a little bit more about it and understand, okay, are there really 600 unique reasons, or are there something underlying there? And I couldn't really categorize all of them, but very many of them, and in my experience, it is also something that I have worked with, but very many of them can be grouped into two things. First, our inability to truly understand others' perspective and to effectively communicate our own. So it's very often that we find ourselves in a situation where we and the people and our colleagues that we're working with, or the stakeholders we're working with, We sit on either side of the table. We have the same number in front of us, but on one side I say it's a 9, and the other one, no, it's a 6. And we basically start arguing, because from our perspective, it's very obvious that it is the number we think it is. To me, it's really obvious that it's a 9, and for the other person, it's really obvious that it's a 6. And it's so obvious that we don't really take the initiative to try to understand the other person's perspective. We don't go around the table and really understand, sit down with them and take a look at it from their perspective, walk in their shoes to understand, why do they think this is a, why does the other person think it's a 6 while I see it so obviously it's a 9. And this creates this conflict that brings us often to a certain shouting match, that when people get really frustrated, and then we go home to our spouse or to our friends and start complaining, oh, that person is just an idiot, he can't know anything, he is he just doesn't see it. Instead of us really realizing maybe it's with us, maybe that is that the fact is that we haven't seen their perspective, and therefore we can't really communicate our own as effectively. And this is very much about understanding knowledge, and the limitation of our own understanding of the knowledge of the universe. So if you look at Rumsfeld matrix, for example, the understanding of known knowns and known unknowns, um, this is a really simple quadrant that we can understand. We can put like the knowledge of the universe in 4 boxes. So there's a thing that we know, the thing that we know that we unknow, the thing where we don't know that we know, and the thing where we don't know that we don't know. So known knowns are something that we understand, we know about, we are aware of, and we understand it. So this is something that we're working on in the project, and is within our field. The known unknowns is something that we are very much, it's close to us. We know it exists, but it's not within our fields. This is, for me, this is something that I work very much with, digitalization and IT, but I am very much aware that I don't know anything about programming. So it's something that I'm aware of, and that I don't really understand, and that's why I bring people in to help me understand that, people that know that, people that understand it. But it's really easy for me to understand, because I know about that. This is an unknown for me. But the more problem is the unknown knowns and the unknown unknowns, the things that I'm not aware of, but I would understand if I was aware of it. An example of that can be that once I was working in a large retail company, and we were working on a new solution for the people that work in store. And the people that work in store, we were going to provide them with a completely new and inspiring digital solution that would give them access to a lot more information to be able to better and more effectively assist the customers. But we failed to realize that in the stores, the people in the stores didn't really have any digital devices. So that just came afterwards. And it is something that we understood when we really started to dig in and talk to the people in the stores. And this is a really good example of, we assumed things, that we assumed that, I mean, everybody has a mobile phone, or everybody has a computer, or something like, everybody has some device that they're working with. And we just assumed that that was the case. And but understand, talking to those people helped us realize that our assumptions were simply wrong. And we understood that. We understand the situation, that when you don't have a device, then you can't really do many things. But we have to be aware of that in order to be able to design for that scenario. And then, of course, is unknown unknowns, the things that we're not aware of and we don't understand. And that is actually, if you think about it, that is pretty much 95 or 99% of our knowledge in the world, is that we just don't know that we don't know it, and we probably won't understand it. There are probably things happening in most organizations, in most companies, that we have no idea about. They're in different departments where we simply aren't involved in, that we don't know what they're doing. We don't even know they exist. And this is something that we really need to keep in mind, that we make so many assumptions based on these the top layer, the known knowns and the known unknowns. and we forget to think about the bottom layer, the unknowns. But and this really multiplies when we increase the complexity. So if you have a big project with multiple people involved, then this becomes even more complicated because we have more silos. People don't have the insight into each other situation. Every silo has a structural depth of one sort or another, impeding us from doing something different things. We talk different languages. I mean, you have to think about, if you talk to IT and marketing or HR, you're using a different language between these between these divisions, or these disciplines, where people kind of don't understand each other while still understanding each other. We use jargon, we use abbreviations, we use different terms for different things, and this really it has a tendency of complicating the communication between us. And then, of course, we all know, everybody that works with change or design or architecture, that we tend to be really good at going into a room and creating a really beautiful and nice looking linear process for how things work. And while it's not wrong, it doesn't really reflect the reality out there, which is just a lot more complicated. And with this increased complexity, with more people involved, we have to think about that every person involved has a different knowledge. What's in their known knowns is completely different from my known knowns. So Monica is one thing, and Chandler is another thing, and Joe is a third thing. And if you're gonna change things, if you're gonna work together on a project, on a change initiative, then we have to make sure that at least everything around that project and that initiative goes above the bottom line. So it's involved, it's included the known knowns and the known unknowns. It's something that we need to be, we don't have to understand everything, but we have to know about it. Everything that is unknown known, or unknown unknown, is something that can create conflict, because we will start thinking, assuming that something's above the line while it's still below the line, and simply because we're not aware of it, we assume that it isn't relevant. So this is something that we have to really work on, because when we don't do that, if it's left unchecked, it forces us to make assumptions. And often it forces us to make assumptions about some really fundamental aspects of the change initiatives that we're actually working on. For example, we assume that we have a holistic perspective. I mean, once I was working with I've been working in several large initiatives, and one of them was with a school. And I mean, we really had to work with, I had to go into and talk to the teachers, to the principals, and to the administrators, to really understand their perspectives. And it became really clear to me that none of these groups, even if they all worked within the school environment, they all had a different perspective on each other. None of them really had a full idea and full understanding of the complexity of the work that was happening in each of those silos. And trying to understand this holistic perspective, understand not only who are we doing this for, but who needs to also do it, and what needs to be done in the background. That is something that we really need to think about. So a holistic perspective is something that we need to have, and we need to have a common holistic perspective. Everybody needs the same holistic perspective. We assume that we have communicated clearly, and that this is very much when we use our words, our concepts, or the model specific to our discipline. That if you're talking to, if someone from IT comes to and talks to the people in marketing, they need to adjust to the lingo of the people in marketing, or at least simplify the language that they use, so they don't use the jargon and the models that are specific for just IT. So, but very often still, we go into a room with people from different disciplines. We present our material. Everyone nods, if not only just to be not to be the stupid guy in the room that asks the stupid questions. And when we go out of the room, just simply because everybody nodded and said, yes, this is, yes, we understand, yes, we understand. we assume that everybody understood what we were talking about, even though they maybe leave the room on the other side and they just say, what was he talking about? Doesn't really matter to us. Is it something we need to think about? And then you just shrug it off and leave. We assume that we possess the right competence very often, especially in projects where we have limited resources. We have to assume that we have some competence, and very often we make some wrong assumptions about that, what competence we actually have and what competence we need. So that's something that's really something that we need to have the right competence to actually be able to address this holistic perspective and to be able to communicate clearly between everybody and collaborate in an effective way. And we assume we are aligned. We assume that because I have said something to Jean Sebastian, that he will understand me and we will now collaborate on this aspect. Even though very often, too often, I found that even after I think I've given a really good instruction, the person I'm talking to is still moving in a completely different direction of what I thought that was going to be a result of that. So alignment is something that we are working from a different perspective, where we're not aligned on what everything is about, how we're going to do things, and why we are doing things, which of course creates complications on what we're going to deliver in the end. And the one that I find is most interesting, one of the most interesting actually, is we assume that we have established a structure and a consistent way of working. I work very much with design and project management. And I feel that I work quite consistently every time I work with a project. But I'm pretty sure that everybody that leads some work, that they feel that they are working consistently. But we have to think about the fact that everybody that is working with us, they are usually working in multiple projects or multiple initiatives. And every project manager usually has their own structure and their own structured way of working. And they usually don't really align with each other. So very often people that are working in initiatives and projects, they are have to adapt to different ways of working in every project they have, and every initiative that they have, meaning that they constantly have to not only understand the project and the initiative they're working on, but even how we're going to work on that, and even having to adapt to different perspective or different way of working within the same organization on just two different initiatives. And that basically, we have to think, when we assume too much, we have to keep in mind that assumptions can really take us astray, that they can lead to some really strange and, well, interesting sometimes, but often just problematic assumptions about things, how we're going to do. Very many have seen this cartoon basically saying, well, how the customer explained it, how the project leader understood it, how the analyst designed it, how the programmer wrote it. It's always a little bit different, and what the customer really needed, what even something different than what he said he wanted, and what we got was something completely different from what either we needed or we started up with initially. So if we don't align these assumptions between all the people involved, then we will get different pictures of what we have. We will have different mental models, and we will definitely not do the same thing and deliver the thing that was intended in the beginning. Occasionally, our assumptions prove correct, and that is something often we actually do succeed with that. And we need to assume things. It's not like we can avoid assumptions, because, well, then we will never get anywhere. But when we do assume correctly, and more often than not, we actually do succeed. But more often than not, assumptions do lead us astray, and they lead us to prioritizing the wrong things, require excessive number of coordination meetings. I mean, who hasn't experienced that we have to have 5 or 6 meetings to talk about exactly the same thing, just in order to be sure that we are all doing the things in a correct way, and we're actually going towards the same goal, or creating the same output. We spend too much time on establishing structures and standards. Every time a new project manager comes in with their own structure and own standards or way of working, we need to adapt to that. We need to create that. We need to invent the wheel, basically, every time we're coming in. Too often, I'm working as a consultant in a new company, then there isn't really any structure established, which means that I need to establish a structure for my work. And this is something that really takes a lot of time. Instead of, if we have standardized way of working, then everybody working on a project and are involved in the organization already know the standard, and the people coming in can easily adapt to that. We rely heavily on a few key individuals, and this is something, when we're working with too many assumptions, then too often the assumptions are really locked inside of the head of the people leading the initiative. So the project manager, or some of the change managers, or some of the key individual involved in the change, when they leave, there's so much information and so much knowledge about what's happening and what has happened that leaves with them, that more often than not, the initiative just dies, or it takes a really, really big step backwards, having to redo multiple things, revisit information, revisit understandings and design decisions and stuff like that in order to go forward. And which, of course, has a really, really big impact on the results of what we finally get. And that means that we fail to achieve the intended results. So what we start in the beginning, if our assumptions are wrong, we will not be able to deliver that in the end. So we can't eliminate the need for assumptions simply because we don't want to get stuck in constant analysis, or what is often referred to as analysis paralysis, where we don't really get anywhere. So really getting into, we have to make assumptions, and we have to be able to make assumptions. But if we actually standardize what perspectives need to be explored, how to test these assumptions, and how we document to facilitate communicating collaboration, by standardizing these things, we can actually minimize our need for assumptions. And by collaborating more effectively, we can actually make more conscious and more collaborative assumptions in the end, meaning that our assumptions will be better and more likely to be correct, leading us in the right direction. And this is something we can do with EDGY from these three perspectives. What perspectives need to be explored? These are the elements, the facets and the elements of the Venn diagram. How we test our assumptions is something that we find in the enterprise scan, and this is what I'm going to be digging a little bit deeper into now in this webinar. And then, of course, how we document to facilitate communication and collaboration. This is something that, if you want to look more into that, John Sebastian had a really, really great webinar on that 2 weeks ago that we can find in in intersection.group in the event section there. So a really good webinar on that. But we're going to be focusing on the enterprise scan. So what the enterprise scan is a simple tool to improve understanding alignment around your enterprise design challenges. It's designed to be simple so that you can use it in pretty much any scenario. In order to use it in a simple scenario, you don't really have to know EDGY. You don't even have to know about EDGY. You don't even have to like EDGY. This is something you can just, is a simple structure that can help you go through and understand the status of a change initiative, and it's completely context agnostic, kind of like EDGY is. EDGY in its basics is context agnostic, meaning that you can apply it to any type of project or initiative in any type of industry, government, in public sector, private sector, any sort of private or public sector there is. This is completely context agnostic. You can apply it to anything. And it is really adaptable. So you can use it for just by yourself in a really simple scenario, just trying to get a little bit of gauge the understanding, your own understanding. And it's also really inclusive. You can actually use it also with the whole team. so that the simple process or activity flow of performing a scan is something you can adapt to the context and situation that you actually find yourself in. So it's really, really simple. It's really, really adaptable, and so you can use it by yourself or with others. The purpose of the enterprise scan, I mean, it is you can facilitate a cross-disciplinary discussion and collaboration. So you can get people to start talking about a holistic perspective or individual perspective that they possibly otherwise wouldn't be willing to or aware of, that needed to be talked about. So, for example, you can have a much more fulfilling talk about the customer journey or the channels that you're working with the architects and the people, the engineers working on behind the scene on implementing the solutions. Or you, on the other side, you can actually start talking about the processes or the assets that you have need in the background in order to accomplish things, so the capabilities that you need, with designers and leaders from a much different perspective than they are used to regularly. Or you can actually start looking into the brand and how it affects the brand with people that are not usually involved in the brand. So you actually see a collaborative discussion between the disciplines that are about fields that are outside of their discipline, outside of their specialty, simply because you see the connection between them. You can foster the holistic understanding in the way that you actually have to go through all the elements. The scan will take you through each of the element with a one simple question per element, forcing you to, you don't have to, it doesn't mean that you have to address every element. It means that you have to take it into consideration. So you have to say that, yeah, Ben, this element is not relevant right now. Great. That is a really conscious decision about ignoring it, instead of actually just forgetting about it or not thinking about it. And expand each team member's knowledge. We all have our specialties and fields of understanding and knowledge. We all have our known knowns and known unknowns. This forces us to bring some of the things in the bottom field, the unknowns, up to the knowns, so that we actually understand that we can bring, we are forced to step into the other person's shoes and start talking to them from their perspective, simply because there's a question there that doesn't really apply to us. We maybe didn't even think about it was relevant, but the scan will force us into that situation, meaning that we will have a discussion about that, increasing our knowledge about that particular area. It ensures team alignment. It ensures, if you have the team involved in the scan talking to each other, it means that everybody needs to talk about the same thing at the same time. And we will inevitably surface some assumptions that are wrong, some assumptions that we don't share with each other, misunderstandings. If we have different purposes for doing things, which is something that's really often. And understandably, a head of HR may have a completely different reason for sponsoring a project than the head of marketing or head of production. So we really have to understand, okay, are they aligned on this? Are they actually talking about the same thing? Are we trying to accomplish the same thing? Focus and orient your exploration and discussion. So when we actually go into the discussion, to having specific talking points to talk from, it helps us stay on track. It helps us make sure that we don't wander off to a different direction, making sure that a 2-hour meeting can be really productive and not just end up in blabber that doesn't really result in anything concrete in the end. And ensure that you don't miss relevant design elements. It means that it is again this conscious decision about, if we ignore a design element, that we do it consciously. It's not because we forgot about it or we didn't know about it. That we always think about the holistic perspective of the Venn diagram of EDGY, meaning that we will take every perspective from every people that are involved in that. And we take that make that conscious decision if you're gonna design for that or not. Because if we don't we decide not to design something, that is actually a design decision in its own right. Select the elements most relevant and most in need of further work. It helps us identify where we have gaps. If there's an element that we haven't addressed at all, we don't have the understanding, we possibly miss the knowledge or competence about that element, it shows us that we need to work on that better. We may need to bring some new people into the team or into the project. We need to look to other people that can give us more information about that element. And we can minimize assumptions, because because of this dialogue, we will increase our knowledge. We will not have to, it will not force us to assume as much as otherwise, and it will help us to make assumptions more clearly and more collaboratively, making sure that the assumptions we have to make, we make better. Potential outcomes of this, an agreed upon description of the design challenge, so that we actually have a common understanding. What is the design challenge all about? What is it going to be? What are we going to deliver? How are we going to do it? What do we need to be able to do in order to deliver, etc., etc. An agreed upon definition of the scope and context. What's involved, what's not involved. Ensuring that the sponsors are actually aligned, not feeding different things to the people involved, so that the scope expands and expands. When this is the scope, this is what we're talking about, and everybody's aligned on that. A list of questions, issues, and items of concern, so that when we have that dialogue, it actually helps bring up concerns and problems that we have within individual elements that possibly come up on the way. So it will help us lift up problems within specific elements that and concerns that we may have, because very often some of us may think that, I mean, this is something that is pretty clear, while others don't see it that way, and they may have a different perspective on that element, meaning that we're actually missing something that has not been addressed. A list of stakeholders involved. It will force us to actually look into who are the people that we're actually talking about, who are the people we're delivering to, who are the different groups within those groups, and who are the people that are going to deliver, so that we actually know who's in the background that needs to be involved in what we're doing, and who are the people making the decisions, so that we actually understand the holistic aspect of the stakeholder analysis that we're working with. A list of an action list with actions, actors, timeframes, and expected outcomes. When we actually identify where we need to focus on within the design challenge, it allows us to better understand, okay, where do we need to look into. It allows us to dig into those elements, making sure that we can actually list up the activities that we need to do in order to address those issues that we have, assigning responsibility to them, assigning time frame to them, and expected outcomes if that is. So it really helps with structuring the work and planning the work. So performing a scan, what is it all about? Well, the first thing we have to do, we have to define the enterprise we're talking about. We usually always have the primary enterprise, which is the company or the organization itself. Usually we're not creating, or we're not changing or working with a whole organization, whole company. We usually are working with specific aspect of that. So we always have to think about the organization as a whole, but then we also have to define what is the aspect of that company or the organization that we're actually changing. Is it a project? Is it a innovation project? Are we changing our product? Are we changing our organizational aspect? Is it a cultural change? Is it a strategic change? What are we actually working with, and who is working within that? And then we have to think about, okay, who is the beneficiary of that project or that initiative that we're working with. So we have the enterprise that we're working with, that is that enterprise of the project. So the enterprise is basically, it's the group of people working towards a similar common outcome. And what is that outcome? Who is the group of people, and who is the people involved, both on the receiving side and the delivering side? The second thing is, well, there is actually no one right way of performing a scan. You can do it pretty much any way you want. You can take the questionnaire and you can apply it in a way that best fits you and your context. So feel free to experiment. Feel free to use it in any way you want, and feel free to change it. It is a simple Excel document, which means that it's really easy to edit it. So you can work with it in any way that fits your best. But I'm going to present two alternatives that we can do, and with the first one being then just doing it by yourself. So for me, for example, as a project manager, it's really beneficial for me to walk through the questions, trying to understand, trying to get order to my thoughts. So who will benefit from, is there a common understanding of who will benefit from the outcome, of who is required to deliver the outcome? So going through these questions will help me understand, get a perspective on, okay, is there actually a common understanding? The questionnaire itself is really simple. It's just the questions going to a standardized question going through each of the elements. It has a certain focus on the outcome elements, so the task, the purpose, and the capabilities. In from a perspective that we generally have multiple tasks that we are addressing, we generally have multiple purposes that we are striving for, and we generally have multiple capabilities that are required, and having multiple outcomes that we need to account for. They can't all be of the same importance, because then basically we have to focus on everything in the same way. We need to be able to focus on specific things, meaning that if we're stuck with times, if we have to prioritize, then we can prioritize the right thing. We can focus on the right task, the tasks that are giving the most are most relevant to what we want to accomplish, or to the purposes that are most important or critical to the organization, the company we're working for, or the capabilities most important to actually deliver on the task in the way that we want to deliver on the tasks. So that it gives you that perspective of going through that, and going through each of the question. Also, if you hover over the sentence, you will get a simple description about what is this actually about, a more detailed description about the question and what it means. But going through that, answering that on your own, gives you the ability to start contemplating from a different perspective. I mean, example of follow-up questions are, do I think others would answer the same? We are talking about a common understanding. It's not about me understanding things. It's not enough that I understand it. Am I sure that the people in the store are actually understanding in the same way, or the other people that are the designers I'm working with, or the leaders that are actually driving the change or sponsoring the change? Will they also have that same common understanding of each of the questions and elements that I have? What insights can I gain from my answers? If I think that there's not a common understanding, what does that mean? Who do I think does not have that same understanding as I have? What does it mean that they have? What is their role in the initiative? What implications will that have on the work, so that I will actually be able to address that and understand, okay, what are we talking about here? What do I need to think about? Is there something do I need to make changes to my work? So how will the answers that I have impact what I'm doing right now? And is there something that I need to pivot in regarding the current plan, or am I on plan? So it's really often is a question of, okay, we are still we haven't finished the design. We need to work better on design, or yes, I'm on track with everything. We're still going in the right direction based on what we started with in the beginning. So just for yourself to really understand what I'm actually talking about, what is going on, do I understand it? Do everybody else understand it? Do we all understand it the same way? And just, what are my feelings about that? What are my gut feelings on that? But then again, we can also start and look at it, actually combine it, doing it collaboratively, so that we combine the answers. So we ask all the people involved, or the core people involved, what they think, how they will answer, and then we just check it out. We sit down together and we talk about it. And we ask, for example, if David says yes, that there is a common understanding of the purposes being strived for, but Ernestine says no. Why is that? David, can you explain for us what are the purposes we're striving for? Ernestine, do you agree with that? Is that something you didn't know about, you hadn't heard of, or did you think of something else? Do you think there's some other purposes we're talking about? And Peter, we can even ask David and Mary that both say yes. We can ask David, what are the purposes that we are striving towards? And then we can ask Mary, is that the same as you, like? Do you have the same purposes that you are thinking about? Do you have the same idea, or you have? Is David making assumptions from another perspective? So we can actually start working through this, asking just each other how they see. Why did they answer the way they answered? If they answered yes, what is their answer? Can they write it up? Is it documented somewhere so we can actually communicate it? And that is another aspect of this. Can we say yes if we can communicate it in effective way, so that if a new person comes in and that person talks to David, that person will get the same information as if that person will talk to Mary. And this is something that is really difficult to do if we don't have it documented in some way. So it's really important that we not only sit down and within a group within 1 hour agree on that, okay, this is something that we have a common understanding when we leave the room. If we don't document it and have something concrete to talk from, then very often our mental models, even if we think in our head that we are talking about the same things, we very often don't, because our mental models, the way we see the world, the way we sense the world around us and things, and assume that things are happening, it's usually very different based on our background, the discipline we're working with, the information that we have at that time, etc., etc. So in the end, in here, we can work with getting together a common understanding and to the status of these of the elements. So the questions we actually come to. There is actually we have a partial understanding of who's going to benefit, but actually when we started discussing it, we found out that we don't really know who's going to be required to deliver the outcome. We thought we had a good idea, but actually when we started working with it, we see that we have to really go back to that. So everybody involved can then say, okay, this is what we agree on. So this will actually give the project manager or the people that are designing the challenge a really good image of what do we need to work on. And this can be, if there's something, it's a question mark, we don't know. We can't answer this question effectively. Okay, is that something? Are we lacking a competence in there? Do we need some other people into the project? Do we need to talk to someone in order to gain that insight? What are we missing? What are we lacking for information? So this can give a really big insight into what's going on and how to go forward from that perspective. So patterns and examples of what to dig into. All participants answer the same. Do they actually agree, or are they just assuming that they agree? That's just the fact that someone says yeah, two people say yes, does not mean that they are actually talking about the same thing. It may be that they are assuming something, and actually they're assuming completely different. So this can really test our assumptions. These can really test the way we are assuming about things. Participants that answer differently. What is the gap? Why does one person answer one way and the other person the other way? It can be just the one person is coming new into the project and hasn't been informed about every aspect of it, or it simply can be that one person was working in their office on everything, and they think they have a really good understanding, and they sent the email, but nobody really either read the email or understood the email. So this is something that can really help us identify the gaps, and again, attacking the assumptions that we are making, that people that say yes, if someone says no, then obviously that person that says yes is making assumptions based on false information. Someone answered don't know. What is it that they don't know? Do they not understand the question? Which means that they possibly, this is outside of their area of specialty, meaning that this is a completely new aspect or element that they need to be, or perspective of the initiative that they need to be involved in and understood, that so that they can actually better understand what are we talking about. What is a customer journey? What is a task? What is a channel? Why do we need a channel? What are we talking about there? Or is it they don't know the status of it? So that is it possibly they know what the channel is, but they don't know if we have the relevant channel to address the challenge that we're working with, or if the channels is up to speed. Is it good enough? So what is it that we don't know? So this is something that can again help increase the knowledge and the understanding of the projects as a whole, meaning that everybody can have a much better picture of the holistic aspect of the initiative, of the project or initiative. Someone answers not relevant. Why do they think it's not relevant? I'm pretty sure people very often think different aspects of a project is not a change initiative is not relevant, and brand comes into mind definitely. Organization, story. This is something that these are aspects that, in my opinion, are really relevant to every change and needs to be considered at least. It can't be that for a certain perspective or certain aspect of the change initiative is not relevant, and that's fine. At least you make a conscious decision about it's not relevant, and if everybody agrees that it's not relevant, great. Then document why is it not relevant and move on. You don't have to design every aspect of every project every time for every scenario, every context. It's very much a question of just going through that, considering that, and understanding, okay, this is something we have to work on, this is something we don't have to work on. And another aspect of that, it doesn't always have to be yes. It's not a question of getting all the an alignment on the assumptions that we're making that says, okay, we need to agree on this. This needs to be both commonly understood and well documented so that everybody outside of this group can also understand the same way. This is partially, we need to be able to communicate it. We have to have a pretty good idea about it, but we don't really need to document everything, or don't need to communicate it to everybody. So it doesn't have to be that well done, but partially. And this can be, no is probably not a good idea. It's more like if it doesn't have to be yes or partially, then it can be non-relevant. Good. That's a design decision. If the group agrees on that, it's just not relevant, or we need yes, or we need partially, then we can start working on, okay, how do we get there? Are we there right now? Or how do we get there? And that in that way, we can actually start planning the activities, understanding what needs to be done, assigning responsibilities to different people, and actually time framing it, defining the outcomes of that work, etc., etc. So really breaking it helps us break down the initiative, the change we're going to be accomplishing, and the project that needs to be is required to accomplish it. So this is something that can really, like I said, it helps you address the assumptions that we make as individual, as a group, makes us better equipped with actually addressing the change and understanding the change that we're actually working on. Performing a scan, there are a couple of things, just practical tips to think about. I mean, for starting, start small, especially if you're unfamiliar with EDGY. Start by yourself, getting familiar with the questions, understanding how you answer the questions, the implications that you get from the questions, and then start adding more people. It's easier to start small so that you can actually control the discussion rather than starting too big, not being able to control the discussion and then have to cut back, because then people may feel they left out. So rather start small and build up than start big and have to cut down. Put EDGY in the background. EDGY is not the thing in this. It's a question. It's understanding the perspectives that you're talking about. That it's EDGY in the background, not really relevant. So if you know about EDGY, great. If the people in the room don't understand EDGY, Doesn't really matter. They need to be able to answer the question. You need to have be able to have the dialogue, the discussion, and communication. If they ask about the question or the model, then you can start talking about EDGY. But if not, if that's not interesting, as long as it facilitates the discussion and helps you go forward, it's not relevant that EDGY is in the background. Don't get stuck on the right answer. There is no right answer. The purpose of the exercise is the discussion. It's not about having a yes or partly or no or anything like that. That is just a facilitation. It's just a way of structuring the discussion and driving the discussion forward. The greatest value lies in the facilitated discussion. It's really easy to get off track. It's really easy to start attacking the questions or questioning the questions or getting off track, starting to talk about something completely different than actually the question is about. So facilitated discussion will help you stay on track, help ensure that if you start going off track, that actually pull it back onto track, and ensuring that you don't need 15 hours to go through it. You should be able to go through it in 2 to 3 hours easily with up to 8 people, even in 1 hour if it's only 2 or 3 people involved. Assign accountability. Ensure that any activity that comes from this, any problem or gap that comes from this, that you assign someone. Okay, you are in charge of that. If you need to find additional information, who is accountable for actually finding the people that can give you that information? If you find there's a task that you need to or activity that need to assign, who is accountable for that activity? So that you always have someone that is accountable, meaning that you can actually drive and you can follow up. And create a safe space. This is painful. It needs to be really, really clear that this can be really painful exercise where you actually go through, you have to admit that you don't know something. And for many people, this is something that can be really difficult, especially if they have their manager or boss in the room, or possibly the boss have to admit that they don't know about something in front of another boss. And this is something we have to have a safe space that everybody feels comfortable with saying, I don't know. And the funny thing is that that's just a fact. No one will know everything by themselves. We need to work together in order to bring things into the known box, into the top left corner of the Rumsfeld matrix. This is something we have to work together with. We will always not know something. It's inevitable. And this is something that we have to be in a space that we feel comfortable with actually admitting that. So this is how I see that the enterprise scan can help us address our assumptions, help us align so that we don't have to make as many assumptions, increase our knowledge about what's going on, and making better assumptions that we have to make about what's happening. It is actually in the background, even if you don't have to really know about it, but that is what helps you actually get this holistic perspective, and that is what drives the scan. And then, of course, you can use it to document. And I encourage you to use it to document, because that will facilitate the discussion. And please, you can check out the link that John Sebastian put in the chat for the webinar that gives you more information about how to map and how to document the model. Just a couple of things in the end. The intersection group is an open source group. We are working with multiple tool vendors for making EDGY more available within multiple tools, so that you can use it to model and communicate in a more effective way. You can get many tools on our website, in enterprise.design. There on the tools, you will get stencils to work with EDGY and Miro, in Draw.io and PowerPoint and etc. It is something that is really easy to work with in the facilitated perspective. You can work with just Post-its. It works really well with Post-its, and you can have people start talking about that. In this case, actually, there's a card game that Jean Sebastian is one of the authors of, which we possibly will put into production at a later date. But it is something that facilitates discussion in a group. And of course, if you want to learn more about EDGY, we have the EDGY Academy, and we have continuous webinars We're going into pause for this summer, but we will pick up again in next fall. Yeah. And of course, we have the pattern book with patterns for behaviors and how to work with enterprise design in general. Yes, that's it.
So here we go. So thank you for sharing. I really like the assumption angle that you took at the beginning of your webinar. And for those who never tried a scan, I encourage you to try it. My business partner and I started using it since even before it was officially launched as a beta, and it really we really had good conversation with our client, and we still use it today in some way, shape, or form. We adapt it from time to time, but it's a very, very good start if you are interested in using EDGY. There's 2 minutes left. I don't know, Helgi, if you have time for question or if anybody.
If there's one or two questions, then we absolutely have time for that, but not that many.
We'll give you a minute to type down if you have anything to ask. Or else,
Nope.
I think it
No
was
questions.
clear. So
That being
let's
said,
wrap this up.
yeah.
Yeah. So thanks for being there. And again, all these webinars are available on the website. You can check mine or all the other that happened throughout this season or the past couple of years. So thank you.
Awesome.
Helgi, last word?
Thank you, everybody. That's it. And hope to see you sometimes more in the group. Please join the group. And if you're interested, see us, meet us in Brussels. That would be awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, everybody.